you don't even really know where it comes from. It's not something, at least in my case, that was learned. I mean, it's something that you're born with. As far as I can remember, when I was a little kid, I was just infatuated with deer. I remember I would just sit at that window and wait for them to get home and run down there and couldn't wait to see if they had shot a deer. And if they had, I'd spend the entire next day, be hanging out in the woodshed looking at that deer, and everybody just thought I was crazy, all my aunts and uncles, but as I got older, my sisters even. I remember them saying to me a number of times, "You're never gonna do anything with your life, all you think about is hunting."
Lee, as a young kid, he just could not wait until he was old enough to go to the hunting shack. I believe it was around age 12. Dad would take you to your deer stand. He would get you up in it and settled and adamantly tell you that you are not supposed to leave your stand and you stay there until Dad came back to get you. He had maybe been there half hour and hadn't seen anything. And Lee, with his mind ticking, he was like, if they're not gonna come to me, maybe I need to go to them. So he got down and started walking around, found some fresh tracks in the snow. Off in the distance, out in the woods, he saw a buck.
That's in the big den's right over there. He's gonna follow that little buck right in. Here he comes, here he comes.
He aimed and shot, and he killed it. And somehow from there, he made his way back to the hunting shack and walked in the door and had told them that he just shot a buck. Right away, no one would believe him, or else they were immediately jealous, like, how does this kid at 12 come and get a buck?
He came to my door and knocked and introduced himself and asked if he could see some of the sheds and the racks that I had on my walls. And I said, sure, come on in. You know, people often stopped and did that. And we started talking, and a week or two later, we went scouting someplace, and I guess we've been doing things together ever since.
Good boy, Tank. Look at that one. Oh, look at that. Yeah, that's our big one.
Yeah, we're whitetail nuts. That's all there's to it. He never really hunted out of state. He always hunted in Minnesota, went up into the north woods, and it was darn tough. It just mostly comes down to drive and what he enjoys doing.
When I was a kid, I would go knock on doors when we were in high school, and everybody basically across the board was like, want to try shooting with a bow? Yeah, go ahead. But as it started getting more and more popular and started becoming more and more successful at it, it became harder and harder to get places. And I saw that early on. I was like, I can see the writing on the wall. I have to have a place of my own.
If you told me 25 years ago that Tiffany would have married this guy and they would have moved to Iowa and had a bunch of property and had a TV show, I would have laughed at you.
I love you. Love you too. Here's you right here, sister. Oh, man.
Yes, and he's down right there.
Yes. Yes.
I met Lee when I was quite a bit younger than he was, and we ended up overlapping in college. After that, we just started dating and have been together ever since.
Look at me, I shot him, he's mine.
It's the best you can do?
Yeah. I don't want to do anymore.
I wish you were coming, but glad I'm hunting.
But both work kids, right? It kind of took me a little time to really get to know Lee and get to know like what he was about. He kind of introduced it to me in real small pieces. He'd be doing his exams, and then I'd be like, are you gonna take the weekend off? No, we're gonna go down to Kansas. And I'd be like, don't you need a break? He was always moving on to the next thing. There was never any time off where he just wanted to hang out in Columbia Heights, Minnesota, which back then I didn't really realize how obsessed he really was. But I didn't have a passion like Lee did. I would never have said, I love hunting. I go hunting every second I can. I go shoot my bow every second I can. So it was kind of really refreshing to me to meet someone with just such a drive and passion and just such an enjoyment of something in his life.
She was such a free spirit, no matter what you wanted to do. Hey, let's go shed hunting, things I wanted to do. And here's a girl, yeah, that'd be fun, let's go do it. I'm gonna drive from there over to Kansas, and from that way we can drive up through Nebraska on the way back and look down by the Platte River and see if there's anything there. Man, that'd be awesome, that'd be great. Hey man, this girl is awesome. I mean, anything that I want to do with hunting, she was just excited to do it. So we got one acorn going for us, Tiffany. We'll hang a stand over it.
He found this piece that he wanted to hunt down in southeast Iowa. He, at 11 o'clock at night, decided he was gonna go check this piece out, and then came back up the next day, and I was like, you're nuts, There's a few times that I was just like, you are absolutely crazy.
His beans have all been eaten, and they're not coming up. I do feel bad for him right now, but I feel way bad for me right now because I'm the one who has to listen to him and put up with this bad attitude for the next 2 months.
Tiffany, I said, Lee, if you don't marry that girl, I said, I'm gonna have to get my ass kicked trying to make you marry her.
I knew Lee was a good guy all the way along, but the day he called me at work and he came with a diamond and asked me, I almost get choked up, if he could marry her. So, that was the start of I think this guy is gonna be an okay person.
Nice. I just smoked him like a... Congratulations.
Then I didn't think he was okay when 3 months after they were married, he said, we're moving to Iowa. I'm like, what? You can't just up and move to Iowa.
A couple weeks after we got married, I remember I was out with my mom, and he called me, and he said, hey, do you want to go out for lunch? And I was like, aren't you supposed to be at work? And he goes, I just quit my job. Do you want to move to Iowa? I was like, let's go. And we literally packed up and left that week.
He came home and said that he was quitting his job because they wouldn't give him the time off to go hunting. That really struck us, what is he thinking?
We were probably one of the first people he met when he came to Salem. He comes in here and clears out a piece of land to put a feed plot on it and starts hunting it.
When we first got this farm, it was the first year we moved down here. We had no tractors, nothing. We lived in the city. I knew nothing about food plots or farming or planting or anything else.
I could never understand why a man of his intelligence would leave the job that he had up there in Minnesota and come down here and try to set up a program that nobody around here has ever done.
When Lee quit his job, he obviously made a pretty good income, and I was a flight attendant and I did not make a very good income, and I was used to taking leaves of absence to go hunting all over with Lee, and all of a sudden I was the only income that we had, and we had a farm down in Iowa. We did not have a dime to our name.
If you're forced to do something, I'm quitting my job, I'm moving to Iowa with no job, no idea what I'm gonna do. When you're forced into those situations, it's just like if somebody says, I can't swim. You get them in a boat and throw them in the water, you're gonna either do one or two things. You're gonna learn to swim really fast or you're gonna drown. When you're put in those positions, you're gonna fight for your life.
They'd been down here maybe a year and a half or so, and I got this phone call of our house in Minnesota is going into foreclosure, and I'm like, how does that happen? And she said, well, we have no money, so we haven't been making payments.
My dad was devastated, to be a man of his age living in his own home that he doesn't own anymore. The rest of us siblings were kind of like, oh, what the heck?
At that point, I was like, okay, you just need to call this quits and move back, and you got a house up here, and Lee needs to go back to work for Coke, and well, that wasn't going to happen.
We just did like everybody else does. You get up every morning, you work your butt off, and it's something that you really want. If you really want to have a piece of property, you really want to live someplace that has great deer, sometimes you just got to take the jump. Worked almost all summer to get this one little field, just by hand, doing it with a lawnmower and hand seeders. It's just what got you hooked. And Tiffany shot a big 8-point out of that stand right there. It was so satisfying to me. It's so rewarding seeing that your work paid off.
It's October 9th, and I just shot a great buck. Yes.
Oh, hello!
Look at that! Yes, that is a great buck.
It took a lot of guts, and he did it.
Look at that pig.
I was a non-hunter, and it's not that I was against hunting, I just knew nothing about it. And when I started dating Lee and he was hunting all the time, for me to like hang out with him, I basically had to go on his hunts. Of course, Lee being Lee, he's like, hey, you know, it'd be really cool if you just took a video camera along and you videoed me when we're out there. And of course, me being me, I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds like fun. By pure accident, we just kind of started filming each other.
Here's him right here, sister.
I am so glad you just shot this deer because I want to get down. I'm freezing and have been for like the last 4 hours.
I thought, boy, this must be love because I used to do it. I used to sit in a tree for hours on end just to sit out there with them.
Better be a good deer, that's all I can say, because I just lost 3 of my fingertips.
That was kind of the start of our filming. He was just like, hey, yeah, I know you don't hunt yet, but maybe you'd enjoy being out there. And that's kind of how we started filming.
I didn't have a job. Tiffany was still working. In the back of my mind all the time, I got to do something here. October 14th, Aubrey Gale calls and says, hey, we're thinking about doing another show. Would you and Tiffany be interested in hosting it? Never really thought about it, to be honest with you, but the timing is right.
I remember walking into our general manager's office, Joel Maxfield. He had a white envelope on his desk and there was some photos kind of hanging out of it. And I grabbed him and I was looking at him and it was a bunch of pictures of Lee. It's like, whoa, I mean, look at this buck, look at this buck, look at this buck. And didn't really know much about him or anything like that. And then, you know, over the next couple of years, I'd say, again, just seeing him on some of the different monster buck videos.
Well, this hunt is with Lee Laksoky from Wisconsin. Check this hunt out. Great shot, Lee.
Yes. Yes. I would talk about Lee a little bit in some of the different meetings, and we had an opportunity to sponsor that show. I don't remember who it was that mentioned that, and I was like, we need to sponsor those guys.
You know, Lee, he always wants the best of the best. You know, it's like we might not have a bed, but boy, you're gonna have a good video camera. Lee just wanted the best deer footage that he could possibly have.
I just smoked Gnarls Barkley.
They just became more and more intertwined with kind of our marketing and a lot of our messaging.
He wasn't going to be just a somebody, he was going to be somebody.
Really, with him and his family, it's been kind of like a Cinderella deal.
I think one of the most beautiful things about it is that they're just as humble today as they were 14 years ago.
Pretty much everything we've done has been a pretty good success, and I think that's because of just our work ethic, and we're not going to let it fail.
Oh, almost to a fault, Lee is driven. Almost to a fault.
What sets Lee apart as a deer hunter from everyone else is his drive. There might be a handful of people who work as hard as Lee does at deer hunting, but I can assure you no one works harder.
Whatever it was that he picked up or decided he wanted to try, he wanted to be the best at it. He had to have all the equipment he needed to be the best at it. He was all in.
Pretty typical day in the summer for us is both of us usually get up 6:30 and take turns running. After that, he'll hit the farm, and he always says, I'll take whatever fire needs to be put out first, and that's what he starts with.
I mean, I've seen Lee work in the earlier days when it was just Lee. I've seen him be in a tractor for 24 hours without coming in. When they had land in Kansas and they'd leave from Minneapolis and drive to Kansas, he'd work his 12-hour shift, and then she'd tell me about that they'd stop and sleep at rest stops, and I'd be like, oh, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
His days in a tractor are long, from sunup to sundown, and a lot of times way after sundown. He's out in those tractors and he's working, and that's the one thing you're never gonna say about Lee, that he's not a hard worker.
Oh, you come all the way here and you stand there, you make me walk all the way over to you.
Yes. Life at deer season is pretty intense around here.
Deer season here is chaos, and it's not just the deer, it's us as well. From early season all the way through, there's not a time that you're just hanging out.
During hunting season, I mean, I don't know how he keeps going and doesn't sleep as much as he doesn't sleep.
Just rushed, just got home, hopped in the shower, grabbed all my stuff and ran out here, and I haven't slept yet.
He's driven. That's a good analogy of him, driven. Possessed. Maybe that's a good analogy too.
You climb down, he's gonna have a package of elk sticks and a Mountain Dew or something in the truck. That's lunch. You're gonna check trail cameras, maybe go move a stand or hang a stand, and then you're gonna get right back in the tree at 1.
If you're down in Iowa during November, I mean, there's not downtime with Lee. I can think of times where it's 2 in the morning and you can hear a bunch of kind of noise out in the room and you're like, what's going on? And Lee just got back in. He was out mowing corn for the next couple days or something like that. I mean, he's just constantly going. There's only so much time during the day, so everything happens after hours and it's nonstop.
When I get done doing a trip down there, I come home, I crash. I'll sleep 10 or 12 hours straight. Yeah, he thrives on it.
The first time I rolled into camp at Lee and Tiffany's, you know, just the excitement of being around those two and the excitement of being in an area where there's so many big deer. I mean, there were so many emotions, but the main thing was the attention to detail that you start learning when you get to his house and his home, and you learn just how much of a professional he is just by being at his house.
When I got to their house, upstairs in the loft, they had a lot of their editing equipment, and I think we went up there right away. Lee's like, oh, let me go up and show you some of the bucks on there, and he just starts running footage, and you know, he had a name for this deer, a name for that deer, and I'm like looking at all these mounts in the house. I'm kind of like, you know, a little bit overloaded, and you know, realizing that, I mean, I love whitetails and I love bow hunting whitetails and love bow hunting anything, but I could tell right away he was at a whole different level.
Even though you'd like to see a 6-year-old 200-inch buck on here, it's like it's just as good to see a 150 and 2 and 3 year olds if they're all upcoming. And that's the first time I've seen that deer.
The one thing that sets Lee apart is his ability to have everything ready to give you the best shot at the biggest deer possible. And he does that for his guest, he does that for himself, and that's why he kills the deer that he does.
I think what motivates Lee is perfection. The guy is he's a perfectionist.
So many times in deer hunting, it's easy to pay attention to the broad spectrum of things, the big things. But Lee pays attention to every little detail, whether it's his gear or the food plot, whatever it may be, he pays very close attention to the small details. And those small details snowball and they become big details at that point.
I've brushed ground blinds in the corn, but when I first was exposed to how Lee Laksoky does it, I mean, you walk up there, you're like, whoa, where's the blind? Like, it's gone. You know, and the guy is like totally psycho about it.
In this cornfield, it stinks with such a drought. This corn is so short, so we're really gonna have to brush it in, but I just knocked out a few rows here and cleaned it out. So it's nice and quiet inside anyway. This should be a big enough square to fit a blind in. Oh, you're such a good helper, Cameron. Thanks for that help.
From a cameraman position, you typically get the short end of the stick. You get the small, crappy deer stand that you can't sit in for very long because you're uncomfortable. Lee will never do that. He's gonna put you in a really nice, comfortable stand because if he knows that you can sit still longer, that gives him a better chance of killing a deer.
The second Lee wakes up in the morning, I know his mind is like on what he's gonna improve habitat-wise, where he's gonna hunt, his farms, his farming, I mean, everything. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a joke around our house in all honesty, you know, with the camera guys and stuff too. It's like, is Lee gonna talk about deer? How long will it take for him to mention deer? Usually not very long.
Lee has so many good qualities and we all have our all faults, but I've never seen someone that has so much mental knowledge about deer.
The most serious deer hunters will pick out the deer they want to shoot in the summer, not Lee. The deer that Lee's going to shoot that particular year are deer that he's been watching, he's been picking up their sheds, he's got trail camera pictures of them 2, 3, 4 years in advance. He's been watching them and he takes all the mental notes of where that deer's bedding, what food plot he likes to go to, where does he go to shed. And that's how he's successful because he's already made the plan years in advance and so he's already got him figured out. It's just a matter of putting in his time.
Deer right here. Oh, that's him, that's him, that's him. Still, he's at 64.
Years ago in northern Minnesota, I mean, it would have been a dream of mine to see a 140, to move to Iowa and be able to manage and see great deer. And kind of the pinnacle of deer hunting is to hit that 200-inch mark, to hit that final equals and see a 201 come up. It's unreal.
You can find a shed on a farm and it could be 3, 4 years old and he will know what deer that is and the age of it and if it's still around and probably when the last time he saw it.
I remember this one from last year though, with that 10 with the split brows like that. I was wondering where he went to, but
People challenge him, you know, they'll pick up a shed at his house and around his fireplace and they'll say, what deer is this? And he knows, and they know he's correct because he writes on the sheds the year and what farm it was. He's like a Rain Man with deer.
I mean, I love looking at trail camera pictures, but man, you know, you better have a stool when you're sitting there with him because he's gonna be like, hey, come over here, look at, you know, and you're like, how many cards does he have in his pocket? You know, we're constantly putting cards in the computer and just looking at picture and picture and picture, and he's like, okay, oh, this one, a 3-year-old, this one's a 4-year-old, and he knows everything about them. And that's not for like 2 deer, it's for like 200 deer, and it's just insane.
Actually, it's very frustrating in all honesty because sometimes I'll be like, hey, I need you to focus, and they're sitting in front of a screen, and this is all the boys, not just my husband, and now it's including my son, sitting in front of the screen on their computer, looking through deer pictures.
You will not find a guy who loves deer more than he does. He's such a great ambassador because he always sheds such a positive light on it in the fact that they have all these farms and all this land, and it's not about him going out and trying to kill every buck he can come across. He's gonna maybe shoot 1 or 2 deer a year, and he spends a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort to manage and grow and feed and create habitat for these deer.
Lee is motivated by getting deer to the next year. That is his motivation. How much antler growth, how healthy is the deer looking, that motivates him every year.
Ready? Yep. Now you got him. You gotta be kidding me.
Money does not motivate him. No, that's that's the last thing that motivates him. Oh, you know, just the amount of dollars spent to get the deer from one year to the next year is, people would be shocked.
And with Lee, it's not about having, you know, a huge tract of land. It's just having the right land and what you do with that right tract of land. He just knows how to bring the deer in, and he knows how to grow them. And I've never been around somebody that pays attention to the detail like him.
At that time when I first went down there, yeah, I mean, obviously you heard about food plots and you planted some food plots, but he was farming. Like, we'd rent this out. Just a whole nother level of anything that I thought was normal or even realistic.
People always say, oh, I want to hunt in your place. He's like, I just have dirt and trees. It's like, that's all we do. And we make it into what we have it, but ultimately I started out with the same thing, you know, Joe Schmo down the block did. So I think he really enjoys that part of it.
Over the years, I've seen it, the passion continue to stay for the deer, but now it's the more of the land and the growing the deer and that kind of passion. Now you have to add in 2 kids' passion too, but he seems to manage it pretty good. It's amazing how much he takes Cameron with him. I mean, Cameron will be in the tractor with him for 6-7 hours, and I can't believe he stays in there that long.
Reagan and Cameron have definitely kind of changed gears for Lee, and in a good way. But there was a time that all he thought about was deer hunting, food plots, all those things. And now that Cameron and Reagan are here, he takes some time, and even during hunting season, to take Cameron out on the buggy and help him check trail cameras. And it's not that that's taken away from his passion himself hunting, but what it's done is he's taken that passion and trying to pass it on to his kids.
Let's be honest, when you have babies, your entire world changes, and it's been really touching for me to watch, you know, a whole new side of Lee. You know, there's like a whole softer side of Lee. It's like, yeah, he's still the driven Lee Laksoky he is, but you know, now he, instead of waking up and thinking about deer, which he actually still does, but I'd probably say he puts his kids first now. He's like, he wakes up and, oh, what are Cameron and Reagan gonna do for the day, and what are we gonna do with them and stuff. So that's definitely changed a little bit.
When will Lee be satisfied? I don't know that Lee will ever be satisfied. There's always going to be another farm, and there's always going to be new deer to watch grow on that farm, and there's always going to be getting his kids to watch what he's doing. And already you can see the passion in Cameron at 3 years old of watching all that and enjoying every bit of it. I think Lee will always be driven.
You set a goal, but the goal is always where you can move it up. Always trying to do better and to perfect things into doing it better.
He's still going to lie awake at night wondering about every deer that he's seen on camera this year and wondering about the people he's got coming into camp. But that's what drives people like Lee.
When he puts his mind to something, he's going to do it. He's going to be the best at it. He's going to put the time in. He's dedicated. And I think that's what drives him. I think, there really isn't a place to stop.
I never thought that I'd be doing what I do for a living today. I never thought that I'd be living in Southeast Iowa. I certainly never thought that I'd enjoy the solitude and peace and enjoy not being near a big town. And there's so many things that I never thought we'd be doing, and all of it is really because of a dream that Lee had.
After kind of the golden season that Lee had this year of shooting 2 deer over 200, the camera guys, we've kind of talked about the fact that where do we go from here, because Lee is going to constantly be striving to be the best that he can possibly be, and he's always going to try to do it bigger and better than he has in the past. So the real question is, where do we go from here? What's next? What level is Lee going to take it to now?